The thing is that castles were a reflection of the armies at the time. Not much changed about castles for thousands of years, because not much changed about the armies that attacked them. Lave me Mont, lave me Bailey, simple as.
That all works before the cannon.
That all works before the cannon, yeah. A mod in a Bailey is a great idea if you don't have cannons shooting at you. That's why nothing really changed for thousands of years with castles. They kind of looked the same. They had a big wall, and you kept the barbarians out, right? Because medieval castles and before were not designed to defend against cannons. They were designed to defend against people with swords and spears and arrows from just running up, scaling the walls, and killing you. Castles were a reflection of the armies at the time. Build a big wall, keep the barbarians out. Then the cannon shows up. The cannon could shatter thick stone walls that were previously impervious to basically anything. To make matters worse, castle walls were usually vertical, meaning a perpendicular impact from direct cannon fire would transfer the full-on momentum of that projectile straight into the fortification.
Yeah, like early tank armor.
Yeah, and if you know anything about armor on a tank, you would know that you would much rather have an incoming shell hit your armor at an angle so that it basically bounces off the armor and doesn't transfer all of its force into the vehicle.
Yeah.
And into you. Usually, castles were built up on hills, which was useful when tired men are trying to scale the walls, but actually it's kind of a disadvantage when someone else has a cannon and aims up at your prominent structure like a giant target that says, "Shoot me."
Would you like to shoot me now or wait till you get home?
The pinnacle of fort building at around 1350 to 1400 was the Château de Vincennes in Paris. It had an imposing edifice, which was not only intimidating to the peasants rolling around in the mud, it was a world-class defensive fortification because it was useful as a tower from which to shoot arrows from at an optimum arc. Basically, you can shoot much farther when you're higher up, and you can also see attackers coming in the distance if you have height. It was a world-class defensive fortification for its era, but the cannon's widespread adoption made it quickly obsolete shortly after it was constructed. In 1453, the Ottomans famously battered down the Great Walls of Constantinople with their cannons. That brought an end not only to the 1500-year-old Roman Empire, but also to the Middle Ages as an era entirely, and definitely an end to the castle as a useful fortification in Europe. Imagine that you are a duke or duchess, and you're hanging out in late 1400s Italia, and you have to fix this problem. Life is otherwise pretty good, and it's been a peaceful 40 years. Sexy men are painting you frescoes. Slightly less sexy men are building you neat contraptions. Things are going well. That is until the massive army of France shows up on your doorstep with cannons. Knock, knock. This castle that was relevant from Roman times until now can no longer protect you. So what can you do? You can add glacis to your existing fortification, your already existing castle. Just dig up some dirt, pile it up around the base, ideally at a nice fixed angle, and then any incoming projectile that would otherwise catastrophically impact the foundation of your castle just hits the dirt, and you're good. But that's not enough. Your facade is still vulnerable. You could also build bastions outside of your existing castle. Circular bastions extend out of your castle, and then when a cannon shot comes in, it's more likely to graze off and have its force be redirected rather than going straight into the side of your castle and into you. Bastions like this were awesome, except now they caused a fatal flaw. When they were circular, they created these things called dead zones where attackers could hide and avoid enemy fire when they were assaulting the fortress. So all of this jostling to protect from the new powerful cannons made people forget that you still got to defend against soldiers on the ground with even swords and spears from climbing up your walls.
And you just built them a big dirt ramp.
With the glacis on the side of the fort, it's even easier to scale the walls than it used to be. So to fix this problem, this dead zone problem, the bastion shape became triangular, meaning that an incoming cannonball is not only likely to graze off of the structure, all areas of the wall are now effectively covered by guys with guns, meaning no more dead zones.
Yeah.
Okay? You could also add triangular ravelins that would be a separate structure on the outside of your fort. So usually between two bastions, you build a ravelin to protect the exposed flat part of the fortress, kind of like giving yourself an extra bastion in the middle. So this basic fort structure that we've talked about became to be known as the trace italienne, the Italian outline. It's also commonly known as a bastion fort. It was not just a pentagon, okay? It was all sorts of shapes. It was a star, an oblate star, or an octagon, and it was whatever that is. Meanwhile, the modern US Pentagon was designed as a pentagon to, quote, fit in between some existing roads on a building site and maximize floor space. But it was probably also an homage to the Trace Italienne. So, these bastion forts are now popping up like wildfire across Europe and even all over the world. Compared to the castles of yore, bastion forts got much wider and way lower, giving themselves a lower target profile and creating areas for deadly overlapping fields of fire. You're putting cannons on the forts now and guys with guns, and they're creating overlapping fields of fire. The same painter I mentioned from earlier also designed the bastion to defend Florence in the 1520s. They made it a mathematical engineering game to perfect the science of defense architecture. And nobody was better at this than the Grand Master of the Trace Italienne, the Steve Jobs of Renaissance fortifications, Sébastien Le Prestre Marquis de Vauban, more commonly just known as Vauban. He put tenaille outside of the main walls to provide extra fire angles and more protection for the vulnerable flat parts between the ravelins. He built crownworks and hornworks. He made redoubts and lunettes.
It came without packages, boxes, or bags.
All of these combined together in a super complex, intricate web of enfilading fire and cannon to make it more difficult for the attacker to win. Enfilading fire. Enfilade is when fire overlaps. Vauban built vast networks of bastion fortresses across the borders of France, so commonly that they became known themselves as Vauban forts, and he made France of its day literally impossible to invade. The Star Fort is basically a visual artifact of the arms race that happened in the Renaissance and early modern period. But all innovations eventually become outdated themselves. For over 3 centuries, the bastion fortification dominated the defensive game. But in the 1800s, the game-changing explosive shell was invented, rendering bastion forts vulnerable to getting blitzed into oblivion. Goodbye.